In a world where love and trust can be easily damaged, a young couple's story vividly depicts the trials and tribulations when relationships become more complicated than ever. Wife proposes open marriage to hide her extramarital affair is not only a story of betrayal but also a journey of discovery into the nature of trust and forgiveness. When a husband discovers his wife's affair, he must not only face the brutal truth but also learn about the motives behind her surprising proposal for an open marriage. Behind the heartfelt conversations and tears is a heartbreaking story of love, deception and difficult decisions. Listen to this touching story through sad audio, to deeply feel the complex aspects of love and forgiveness. In life, we sometimes find ourselves in difficult situations that we may not have anticipated. What actions can I take to avoid this situation? What steps can I take to prevent this from happening? When faced with the harsh reality of life, I was faced with a painful truth: it is impossible to make an adult realize that their actions can destroy everything they hold dear. You cannot force them to do anything, you can only witness and deal with the consequences. I found myself in such a situation. My wife, Amanda, believed that trying new things would make our relationship stronger, showing the strength and meaning of love. But to me, it was just a demonstration of her emotional weakness, of her selfishness and personal satisfaction. I am just an ordinary man, living an ordinary life. I am not a heroic romantic hero like in novels. I have my flaws. I tend to be too self-absorbed, overworked, and sometimes show unnecessary anger. It is not something I do on purpose. I am just a human being with my own emotions and problems. Amanda and I have been married for 19 years, and we spend time together 2 or 3 times a week. It's always a pleasure, and we share a passion for hobbies like soccer, good books, and TV shows, along with the responsibilities of being parents. Sometimes these things distract us, but we still make time for each other when we need it or when the urge arises. Our life seemed to be going smoothly. Our finances were improving, and our 2 daughters, Olivia and Audra, ages 16 and 14, brought joy to our lives. In my eyes, life was great until Amanda started to get interested in unusual ideas. She thought our sex life was too monotonous and insisted on adding some spice to it. Despite my lack of interest, I agreed to participate in some experimental games, initially in different positions that I found interesting, thanks to my good physical condition. However, the novelty quickly wore off and gradually turned into role-playing, a concept that I couldn't understand where it came from. Was it from friends, women's magazines, or some TV show? It seemed like fun the first few times, but eventually, it became difficult. Trying to maintain the image of Leonardo DiCaprio while remembering that the woman in front of me was Scarlett Johansson was exhausting. When I refused to continue, Amanda expressed her displeasure. She asked about the last time I went on a date. I reminded her that just on Friday, I took her to an Italian restaurant she liked, then went to the movies while her mother looked after the kids. But when Amanda asked about the time I went out with another girl, I immediately felt tense. She quickly insisted that she didn't mean anything by it and just wanted to know the name of the girl I was dating. I told her her name was Donna, and after a big argument about the date, Amanda insisted that she was upset that I was dating someone else. I laughed, reminding her that dating was a scary experience, not the date itself but the whole process, from mustering up the courage to ask a girl out to those first awkward conversations. Amanda reiterated that she never felt like dating anyone else. We agreed that marriage meant not dating anyone else but each other. After that, things seemed to calm down, and I didn't hear anything about it for a while. One Friday night, after we had enjoyed some intimate moments without any tricks, Amanda suddenly mentioned something. She said that she had told Pro that she would not be jealous if I asked her. In response, I said that was fine, but I had no intention of asking Pro. Amanda asked me if she might feel jealous if I danced with another man. I tried to joke about it, but Amanda was not amused. She clarified that she had never minded what men I danced with as long as they behaved themselves. She then asked if there was anyone at the event that I would like to dance with. I replied that no one had asked, I wasn't sure where this was going, but it felt uncomfortable. I got up and went to the living room to play video games, but Amanda stood in the doorway watching me for a moment before going back to bed. I joined in. 2 months later, we attended Angela's promotion party at White Rhino, which had a great band. We sat in a big round booth, and Amanda started talking to Kra. She mentioned Kra wanted to dance again and asked if I would be a gentleman and invite her. Little did I know that this would lead to difficult situations and difficult decisions in our relationship. Just one small decision can make a difference. I found myself in a rather uncomfortable situation, caught between valuing Kra's friendship and wanting to spare her feelings. Dancing with her was the last thing on my mind, especially considering the way her lush body would be pressed against mine. I wasn't entirely sure how to politely decline without causing any awkwardness. While I genuinely enjoyed dancing, my confidence paled in comparison to Kra's, who moved with a grace reminiscent of a big cat. Feeling trapped with no easy way out, I stood up and casually remarked that I thought they were playing our song. Kra quickly joined me, her brown thighs peeking out from beneath her short blue dress. As the previous song faded, the band shifted to a slow number, leaving me wondering why the timing felt so off. Kra fit against me effortlessly, and I could feel her bust pressing against my chest, her black curls brushing my face. She had a delightful scent, and when she looked up at me, her big brown eyes resembled deep, inviting pools. Her complexion was that of coffee with cream, not too dark, but alluring nonetheless. After our dance, Kra expressed her gratitude, mentioning that Amanda had told her I wouldn't mind dancing with her. I complimented her dancing skills but admitted that, despite my fondness for her and my belief that she was the sweetest girl I knew, dancing together wasn't a good idea for me. She giggled, assuring me I was safe with her, and expressed how she would have been all over me if I weren't married. However, she emphasized the importance of our friendship and suggested we simply enjoy that one dance. I squeezed her a little as the song concluded, but when we returned to our booth, I realized Amanda was missing. Scanning the room, I finally spotted her in a black and white dress, laughing and dancing with a young Nordic-looking guy. His hands wandered lower than they should have, and when she noticed me watching, she smiled and waved. A wave of anger washed over me. It felt like she had set me up with Kra just to have an excuse to dance with this guy. Frustrated, I tossed a couple of $20 bills on the table and headed toward the exit. Halfway there, I noticed Kra watching me intently. She hurried after me, slightly out of breath, and asked where I was going. I explained that it felt like we were being played. Amanda had been casually talking about dating other people, which I suspected was a test. By getting me to dance with Kra, she created a distraction to flirt with Romeo. Kra asked if I was really going to leave Amanda there, to which I firmly affirmed my intention to do so. She grabbed my arm, looking a bit guilty, and apologized. I reassured her, saying I hated being played just as much as she did. Kra then asked if I could take her back to my house to retrieve her car. As we neared my place, my phone buzzed, but I ignored it. Kra shot me a look when her phone rang and answered it. She explained to Amanda that we were almost home and that it wasn't her idea to leave. Kra warned Amanda not to put her in that position again before ending the call. Then she informed me that Amanda wanted me to come back and get her. I sighed, expressing my desire for a wife who didn't play games. Kra then explained that it was Mar from work who had been discussing the idea of an open marriage, claiming it improved their intimacy. Apparently, Amanda had fallen for the concept, and Kra believed she was trying to set us up. I was taken aback when Kra mentioned that Amanda knew she had feelings for me and had always found me attractive. I nearly choked, feeling the awkwardness of the situation, and quickly apologized. Kra reassured me, saying she found me attractive, but emphasized that she was a one-woman kind of person and not good at sharing. I appreciated her perspective and promised to keep her updated on the situation. After she left in her car, I took a moment to think, then gathered my belongings from the master bath and moved them to the guest room. I also collected my work items, locked the door, and went to sleep. The drinks I had consumed helped me drift off, but I was jolted awake by a loud slam downstairs followed by echoing footsteps in the hallway. The doorknob twisted a few times before I heard Amanda's cautious whisper outside the door, trying not to disturb the sleeping girls nearby. For about 10 minutes, her tapping and whispering persisted before her footsteps retreated to what used to be our bedroom. Strangely, I found myself disliking the guest bedroom's unfamiliar comfort. In a cowardly attempt to avoid confrontation, I tried to slip away before she woke up. However, I failed as she descended the stairs just as I was packing files into my briefcase. Clearly angry, she questioned what was wrong with me. I retorted that maybe she should be asking herself that same question. Her voice rose as she demanded to know what I meant. I picked up my briefcase, stating that everything I did was a reaction to her actions. I emphasized that I didn't want to look at her at that moment and warned her how close she was to permanently angering me. I instructed her to get her act together, check off all her points, and be ready to talk about it when I got home. As I mentioned my plans to pick up the girls and take them to my mother's house to sort things out, I noticed Amanda's face drain of color. She feigned ignorance about the situation and brought up potential plans for the evening. I firmly told her it was her choice. If she truly wanted to repair what was broken, she needed to be proactive and stop with the excuses. If she preferred the status quo, she could go ahead and live her life as she pleased. I concluded by stating that she needed to move her belongings into the spare bedroom because I had no intention of sharing my bed with her any longer. Amanda's reaction was one of indignation, but I left her to process her feelings while I went to work. After picking up the girls from school, they eagerly anticipated their visit to Graham's house for the night. I briefed my mom about the issues Amanda and I were facing, grateful for her understanding and support without probing me with questions. When I returned home, Amanda was already there, having baked cookies, with a warm plate and a steaming cup of coffee waiting for me. She approached and embraced me momentarily, kissing my cheek before settling beside me on the sofa. I reached for an oatmeal chocolate chip cookie, feeling a fleeting sense of optimism. It seemed like we might be able to bridge the gap between us, but I couldn't ignore the underlying tension that needed to be addressed. I took a deep breath and expressed my disappointment regarding the distressing situation Amanda had created the previous night. I pointed out that her actions had not only been hurtful to me but also embarrassing and disrespectful to C, who was supposed to be her friend. Amanda avoided eye contact and offered a hesitant apology, which led me to reflect on my own approach. I realized I had handled the situation poorly in an effort to open up communication with her, recognizing that she had often shut me down in the past. When I asked her about her thoughts on the future, Amanda hesitated before candidly mentioning that she had considered the possibility of dating other people. My heart sank at her revelation, and I felt compelled to address several major issues with that idea. First and foremost, we were both married. Amanda countered that other married couples do it, citing open marriages as a way to deepen love and connection. Skeptical, I questioned her sources, prompting her to mention a couple, Marcy and Herb, claiming their open marriage had strengthened their relationship. Doubtful of her claims, I suggested we verify the information online. After a few clicks on my laptop, we discovered that only a minuscule fraction, less than 1%, of Americans are in open marriages. Amanda seemed taken aback by the statistic but attempted to downplay it, estimating that at least 3 million people must be in such arrangements. I challenged her assumption, doubting that many people were married, open or otherwise. To illustrate my point, I suggested we look up how many Americans expect their partners to be faithful. The result was eye-opening. Over 95% of Americans anticipated fidelity from their spouses. I pondered aloud what that meant, and Amanda speculated that it indicated a lack of open-mindedness. She expressed surprise at the low numbers, given how frequently she heard about alternative lifestyles. I couldn't help but wonder how many open marriages ultimately end in divorce. In response to my curiosity, I typed in how many open marriages end in divorce, discovering that a staggering 92% dissolve within 5 years or less. I analyzed the figures, breaking it down for Amanda. So, let's see, Less than 1% of Americans are in open marriages, meaning out of 1 million people, fewer than 10,000 are in such arrangements. If 92% of those end in divorce, that leaves us with only 800 couples that don't. That's 800 successful relationships out of 1 million. Can you do the math? Amanda reluctantly acknowledged that the odds of success didn't look promising. I pointed out that the few successful cases often involved both partners willingly participating. I emphasized that in our situation, where one person feels coerced, it would inevitably lead to resentment, jealousy, and insecurity. The emotional fallout of such an arrangement would be detrimental to us. I expressed that the only scenario in which I would entertain such a painful and absurd proposition would be if I were desperate to keep her. I reassured her, however, that I wasn't that desperate. I reminded her of the interest other women showed in me, citing an encounter from the previous night. If I were a desperate individual, I might consider playing along with her desires, but I made it clear that I wasn't that man. I expressed that I would rather face any hardship than have my heart broken again. In response, Amanda weakly suggested that not everything on the internet is credible. I agreed, acknowledging that misinformation exists, especially regarding the prevalence of open marriages. I advised her not to take those claims at face value. The conversation left us both in a complicated emotional state, caught between past grievances and future possibilities. I found myself grappling with the trust Amanda placed in Marcy, questioning whether she truly believed everything her friend told her. When I pointed out Marcy's tumultuous history of multiple divorces, it became evident that Amanda was unaware of Marcy's past relationships. Pressing her further, I discovered that Marcy had been divorced 4 times. "You're really taking marriage advice from someone with that track record?" I exclaimed incredulously. Amanda protested, claiming that Marcy and her current husband, Herb, shared a strong bond, but I couldn't mask my disgust at the absurdity of the situation. "How do you know so much about their relationship?" I pressed, urging Amanda to reveal the source of her information. She confessed that Marcy often spoke about her life, but I learned that Marcy and Herb barely communicated, preferring to engage in social activities with friends rather than nurture their own connection. My frustration mounted as I confronted Amanda about her actions, asking her how she envisioned this bizarre situation resolving itself. When Amanda suggested that our intimate life had become stagnant, I was taken aback. "Stale? I've been perfectly happy," I asserted, emphasizing that her newfound desire to play games had turned everything upside down. Reflecting on the last time we tried something new, I recalled how Amanda had climaxed multiple times, questioning if these ideas came from Marcy. Her expression told me everything I needed to know. They did. I reacted with disbelief and anger, insisting that our marriage was strong and rejecting her claims that a change in our relationship dynamics could be beneficial. "You're talking about a nightmare," I argued, challenging her belief that these ideas aligned with men's fantasies. "If you think that's what we need, just Google it. I want to be clear, if you pursue this path, it will mark the end of our relationship." Amanda looked taken aback, seeking clarification. "Are you saying you want a divorce?" she asked, disappointment lacing her voice. I echoed her feelings, expressing my doubt about the integrity of our marriage based on her discussions. I pressed her on what she would tell our daughters if we were to split up, refuting her notion that it would be because I couldn't accept her exploring other relationships. "The truth is, their mother doesn't love their father enough to honor her vows and provide a loving home," I stated, accusing her of prioritizing her desires over our family's well-being. Our anger escalated, and Amanda insisted that her path was inevitable. I countered, adamant that I wouldn't accept it, warning her of the consequences. "You're mistaken if you think our marriage can survive your involvement with someone else. The moment you act on it, I'll consult a lawyer." I laid out the options. We could either forget everything and initiate a quick divorce or schedule therapy sessions to address her troubling behavior. I expressed skepticism about the potential success of therapy, labeling her actions as a major mistake that would lead to widespread unhappiness. I warned her that Marcy's influence was leading her astray and that positive outcomes were unlikely. "I won't just sit back and watch this unfold," I declared, emphasizing the suffering that could ensue for everyone involved. As our confrontation continued, Amanda taunted me, insisting on her freedom and claiming I couldn't stop her. She argued that I was too scared to initiate a divorce, threatening to take the girls and the house while leaving me with alimony and child support. In response, I urged her to reflect on the situation and consider the ramifications of her decisions. Despite her proclamations of love, I rejected her suggestion of exploring this new path, emphasizing that the excitement she envisioned would only lead to risks and heartbreak. Amanda approached me, attempting to embrace and kiss me, but I pushed her hands away and stood firm. "Don't touch me. I need to think about this," I declared, though in reality, I was strategizing my next move. The complexities of divorcing her loomed large, and I knew I needed to act quickly. I retreated to the master bedroom, locking the door behind me. After spending 30 minutes researching and 10 minutes on the phone, I devised a financial plan. However, the looming question was the girls' well-being. Under Georgia law, children over 14 could choose their custodial parent. I felt confident about Audra, my little princess, but Olivia adored her mother. I feared that if they were made aware of Amanda's intentions to leverage our daughters in pursuit of an open marriage, they would be repelled. It felt cynical, but I wasn't the one rewriting the rules. I considered how Amanda had never approached me before our marriage with her intentions. If she had expressed a desire to remain faithful for 19 years before exploring relationships outside of our marriage, I would have walked away immediately. She was attempting to manipulate the situation, forcing me into compliance through ultimatums. 2 nights later, our conversation began with Amanda offering an insincere apology. I was not inclined to accept it. "Why are you seeing a therapist when you deny having any issues?" I questioned, but she deflected, shifting the blame onto me for considering other men. The tension between us was palpable as we faced the reality of our crumbling marriage. I confronted Amanda, pointing out the glaring contradictions in her arguments. She insisted she wasn't plotting anything specific, just floating the idea of options if they ever came up. I couldn't let that slide. I shared my own perspective, revealing that, over the years, I'd faced numerous temptations to cheat but had always chosen to stay true to my commitment to loyalty in our marriage. It was crucial, I emphasized, to have a solid plan for a successful relationship, and I expressed my deep concern over her apparent lack of commitment. "What about our promises to each other, our children, even to God?" I questioned. Despite her hissing response, I pressed on, pondering how our daughters would perceive her betrayal. "You won't be able to shield them from this," I asserted. Later that day, Amanda threatened me with the idea that as their mother, she would surely gain custody of the kids. "You'll never see them again," she vowed, warning me to keep my mouth shut. After our heated exchange, she stormed off, creating enough noise for anyone nearby to hear. I caught the faint gasps and muffled sobs of our daughters as I approached the stairs. When I reached Audra's vacant room, I moved down the hall to Olivia's room, where I heard quiet voices. Knocking gently, I asked to come in. Olivia opened the door, revealing both girls, their eyes red from crying. I sat down between them, embracing them tightly and expressing my regret that they had to witness such a painful conversation. I explained my belief that they wouldn't fully understand unless they heard the conversation themselves. "It's not your fault, Dad," Olivia reassured me, placing the blame squarely on her mother. She mentioned that she hadn't initially believed me but now understood the situation. Audra, too, was incredulous, questioning how their mother could betray me and them. I admitted that I was at a loss regarding Amanda's motivations, explaining that she had been swayed by negative influences at work and had made a definitive choice to pursue this path. I tried to dissuade her, I shared, noting her lack of concern for the family. Audra asked if Amanda was unwell, but I could only reply that I had no insight into her current mindset. I had suggested therapy and marriage counseling, but Amanda showed no interest. "What should we do?" Audra asked, clearly worried. I advised them to do nothing for now, explaining my plan to wait until Amanda thought I had given up. I anticipated she would go on a date, and at that moment, we would be prepared to leave. I expressed doubts about her willingness to listen, even if I attempted to reach out. Are you both with me on this? I asked, seeking their support. Audra exchanged glances with Olivia before stating firmly, No, Dad. We're going with you. My heart swelled with gratitude, finding solace in the unity of my children amid the turmoil of the past 19 years. For the next 2 months, Amanda and I lived like distant roommates, barely exchanging words and nurturing little affection for one another. The spare bedroom became her domain, while I occupied what used to be our shared space. I tried to engage her in conversation, hoping to steer her back, but our interactions were strained. One evening, while tending to the garden together, I seized the opportunity to address the situation. How's your plan working out? I asked. Is our marriage really strengthening? Where's the passionate lovemaking you envisioned? Is this as exciting and fulfilling as you thought it would be? For the first time, I noticed a flicker of doubt in her eyes, quickly replaced by anger. This is all your fault, she snapped. I reiterated my disapproval of her intentions, emphasizing that I had never welcomed the idea of her engaging with others. You need to see the positives here, she insisted during our heated exchange, practically shouting that everything could be perfect if I just let go of my stubborn pride. I challenged her notion of perfection, questioning for whom it would be ideal. From my perspective, the current situation was far from perfect and decidedly unfavorable for me. I love you, Amanda, I said firmly. My love for you means granting you freedom while honoring my commitment. Your desire for exploration feels selfish to me, not an expression of love. I made it clear that my devotion was reflected in my choice not to pursue relationships outside our marriage. If you truly love me, you would do the same. Tearfully, Amanda denied that her love had waned, claiming it had only grown stronger. I pushed back, suggesting that her actions felt like a dagger to my heart. In response, her fury escalated as she announced her plans to go to a club with a colleague, Bill White, that Friday night. You should join us, she insisted, promising an exciting experience. Reluctantly, I agreed, reasoning that if she was going to do it anyway, I might as well go along. As she rushed across the garden, she embraced me tightly, expressing gratitude for my willingness to participate despite the circumstances. In that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that our love was unraveling, leaving me to wonder whether there was still a thread of hope worth holding on to. Regret washed over me as I grappled with the unbearable weight of my situation. I felt a strong urge to reach out for support, so I decided to call C. It quickly became apparent that she was furious when she learned about the plan. Her voice was laced with anger as she expressed her shock at being unknowingly set up for a rendezvous with me. When Mandy invited her out for a night of clubbing with Bill, C had no idea what was really brewing behind the scenes. Upon hearing the details, she vowed to confront Mandy, a fire igniting within her. I needed C's help, and I pleaded for her trust. I reassured her that I required her support during this pivotal moment, as I had finally made the decision to leave Mandy. C hesitated, still simmering with distrust, but after I calmed her down, I laid out my plan. I would pretend everything was fine, and I needed her to play along by coming home with me. When she questioned my sincerity, I laughed, confessing that my intentions were indeed somewhat devious. Surprisingly, the prospect of revenge appealed to her, and she agreed to help. As the week progressed, I watched Mandy engage in affectionate moments with me, as if trying to capture every fleeting second together, unaware of my true intentions. Friday morning, before I headed to work, I made sure to emphasize the gravity of the situation to Mandy once again. I wanted to confirm that she was absolutely sure about her decision to go through with the plan. I reminded her of the enjoyable week we had shared, but she remained resolute, promising we could talk later if necessary. Grateful for my willingness to play along, she danced out of the bedroom, exuding excitement. You know you'll love this, she teased, leaving me to think sourly, let's just get through today. When C arrived at my place that Friday evening, she was nothing short of breathtaking. While Mandy was cute and petite, C was in a whole different league, tall with a stunning silhouette that left little to the imagination. She wore a tight, short red sheath dress that sparkled with sequins, making her look simply irresistible. I was dressed in a sport coat, black pants, and a ribbed t-shirt, trying to keep it professional. As she entered, C playfully commented on my outfit, teasing that I was trying to seduce her. I quickly clarified that my intentions were strictly business for the evening, reserving any romantic thoughts for another time. With a hint of regret, C mentioned her choice of underwear, a thong she thought I would appreciate. "Why not show me?" I suggested playfully, pulling her closer and teasingly lifting the hem of her dress. She warned me about the possibility of Mandy walking in at any moment, but I pressed on, emphasizing that I needed Mandy to think I was fully participating in her little game. Our laughter filled the room as the tension mounted. Just as I was about to enjoy the view, Mandy unexpectedly walked in, catching us off guard. C quickly adjusted her dress, and Mandy greeted us with a smile, commenting on our early start to the evening. As we left for the night, I could sense the underlying tension. Bill was waiting for us at the club, but I didn't think the evening would kick off as he expected. I shook his hand, crushing it with a grip strengthened by years of powerlifting. I could see him wincing, trying to maintain his macho facade. As I sized him up, I couldn't help but draw a parallel to Tom Cruise, just the kind of pretty boy who might be overly pampered. When I asked him if he was a hairdresser, he laughed and dismissed the idea, implying that hairdressers were predominantly gay. In the midst of our banter, I casually brought up my 6-year affiliation with Scientology, explaining that I was merely testing a theory. C, who had heard my theory before, was on the verge of bursting into laughter. Meanwhile, I noticed Amanda's anger simmering beneath the surface, and I realized I had perhaps revealed too much of my private thoughts to C. Seeking a distraction, I suggested we find a booth, and C confidently marched ahead, her posture tense but purposeful, with Bill trailing behind at a safe distance. Once Bill was out of earshot, C erupted into laughter, and I couldn't help but join in, acknowledging, "You're a mean one, Corwin." I grinned back at her, realizing just how exhilarating the evening had become. As we made our way to the booth, I encouraged her to keep the act going, and she played her role convincingly. By the time we reached our seats, I found myself thoroughly captivated by her. After 2 exhilarating dances, she showcased every possible form of flirtation, her movements intoxicating. While Amanda was occupied with Bill, I leaned in close to C and whispered, "Are you ready for the big show?" Her eyes sparkled with an energy that hinted this was more than just a game for her. I found myself drawn into the depths of her radiant brown eyes, captivated by the full, lush lips that parted ever so slightly as her petite tongue moistened them. The night was taking unexpected turns, and I could feel the tension escalating, setting the stage for a dramatic unfolding of events. Her chuckled and cautioned against being too mean to Mr. Bill, but Amanda's expression shifted dramatically, her demeanor puffing up like a pufferfish, the smug smirk vanishing from her face. I hastily informed them that Kra and I were planning to leave, suggesting they enjoy the rest of their night. Amanda walked us to the door, her concern palpable as she asked about my well-being. She noticed I had been acting strangely earlier. "I'm not okay," I replied candidly, urging her to consider leaving with me. I proposed going home to try and resolve our issues, warning her that if she stayed, it would be a permanent choice. In response, she lit up, brimming with enthusiasm. "This could be great for us," she said, encouraging me to enjoy myself, assuring me that everything would turn out fantastic. I couldn't help but retort, hinting at her interest in Mr. Bill rather than me. "We're leaving," I insisted, but she grabbed my arm, emphasizing how this was a wonderful opportunity, insisting that Pro was genuinely interested in me. I probed deeper, teasing her about spending the night with Mr. Bill and questioning his stamina. She hesitated, finally admitting she might return home around midnight, hinting at plans to spice things up with him. The realization hit me hard. I slapped my forehead, recalling their intentions. Just be quiet, I urged, half joking. If Pra and I are still together when you get back. I trailed off, feeling a mix of emotions as she kissed me goodbye. I hoped she would enjoy her night, knowing it might be the last time we shared such a moment. I stepped out and climbed into the car where Pra was waiting. She looked at me, a hint of concern in her eyes. Are you really sure about this decision? Considering your long marriage? I let out a heavy sigh, affirming that I was indeed sure. She commented on my surprisingly calm demeanor, noting the absence of distress in my voice. I explained that I had exhausted my emotional reserves, having been upset for far too long. I'm just tired now, I said, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. It's time to move on. Upon our arrival at the house, we were greeted by the sight of a moving truck already being loaded. Our daughters, Olivia and Audra, were busy hauling their clothes downstairs, packing them into large plastic tubs. We were only taking essential items, the bed from the master suite, the girls' beds, their TVs, electronics, and the big screen TV we had upgraded to just 6 months ago. Once the girls finished packing, Pra took them in her car to our new place. We made sure it was as far from the old house as possible while still remaining in the same school district. As the movers wrapped up, I took a moment to glance around the empty house. It felt silent and void, with only the faint echoes of 19 years of memories lingering in the air. I sighed, realizing how much had changed and how far we had drifted apart. I took off my wedding ring and set it down on the kitchen table, placing my cell phone beside it. The girls' phones were already lying there, signaling that it was time for us to leave. A wave of melancholy washed over me as I prepared to step away from a relationship that had spanned nearly 2 decades. It felt almost surreal to be walking away with just a few petty jabs directed at Amanda and Mr. Bill. I reflected on the fact that those 19 years had been, for the most part, pretty damn good. But life, as it often does, had taken an unexpected turn. After locking up the house, I loaded my tools from the garage into the back of my truck and drove away. The girls were buzzing with excitement about our new home, particularly the backyard pool. Are you excited about the new place, baby? I asked Audra, who let out a cheerful yeet. In response, I had no idea what yeet meant, but it sounded positive enough. Pra was with us, looking stunning as always, but even her presence couldn't lift the weight I felt. If she were the spitting image of Jennifer Lawrence, it wouldn't have mattered, I was just too tired to appreciate it. I sensed she understood and offered me a dazzling smile followed by a quick peck on the cheek before leaving. The sweet scent of her perfume lingered in the air, a reminder of her warmth. That night, I surprisingly managed to sleep, though it wasn't restful. The next morning, I got up and brewed a pot of coffee, the rich aroma filling the air. The girls joined me shortly after, and we enjoyed a Danish kringle with chocolate milk for breakfast. They settled in front of the TV to watch cartoons until noon, 2 beautiful little bundles of energy splashing around in their bikinis while I lounged by the pool, watching them with a hint of nostalgia. My mind drifted, wondering what Amanda was up to. By now, she'd likely be frantic, desperately trying to reach me and figure out what had happened. The thought of her searching for us made me feel a little guilty, but I quickly brushed it aside. I was no longer working, I had sold my business and come out well. The girls were on summer vacation, so we had no real plans beyond going grocery shopping, which we did by walking or taking the bus since the truck was parked in the garage. I imagined Amanda might have even contacted the police, but without a car, they would be at a disadvantage. The only way she could reach me was electronically. Almost immediately, she flooded our inboxes with messages, sending texts to the girls whenever they logged onto social media and tweeting about her search. We read her frantic messages but chose not to respond, determined to let her find us the hard way. I figured she would eventually come looking for me, especially with bills piling up and work to attend to. Meanwhile, I was in no rush to make any payments and knew she would quickly fall behind without my financial support. Our home had significant equity, and losing it would be a bitter pill for her to swallow. About 3 weeks later, While grocery shopping, a private detective approached me. He asked for my name and I immediately knew who had hired him. "Your wife sent me to find you," he declared, intending to inform Amanda of my whereabouts. I felt a mix of anger and resolve. This was the moment I had been dreading, yet it was a testament to my decision to leave. I knew I had to stand my ground, for my sake and for the girls. I didn't want to go back to the life I had left behind, not when there was a chance to forge a new path filled with possibilities. But fate had other plans. Before I knew it, the police arrived. Mandy had concocted a story, telling them I had kidnapped our girls. They asked me to come down to the station for questioning. When I refused, they arrested me, taking me downtown. The girls were placed in another vehicle, and when we arrived at the station, Amanda was already there, trying to hug the girls as they walked in. To my dismay, they pushed her away, clearly uncomfortable. A female officer came to escort the girls away with Amanda, while I was taken to a separate room. The officers in my room wasted no time and began questioning me aggressively. I handed them my ID and pointed out that they already had my driver's license. I made it clear that I would remain silent until I had legal representation. This immediately shifted the tone of the conversation, and I could hear one of the officers mention that I was lawyering up. They handed me a phone, and I called my attorney, John Trimble. He arrived within 45 minutes, as we had agreed upon. The entire ordeal took about 3 hours to sort out. During that time, the girls affirmed that they were with me willingly, denying any claims of kidnapping. They refused to speak to their mother, which must have been crushing for her. John quickly took the reins, emphasizing the lack of any court order regarding custody. He pointed out that, according to Georgia law, both parents were seen as equal candidates for custody, and that children over 14 had the right to choose where they wanted to live. Ultimately, the police had no choice but to let us go. As we walked out, the girls were taken by Kra, who was waiting for them. Amanda followed us, desperately pleading with the girls to talk to her. They climbed into Kra's car and drove away, leaving Amanda and me alone in the parking lot. She was a mess, tears streaming down her face, her eyes filled with anguish as she fell to her knees. I couldn't help but remind her that I had warned her about getting involved with Mr. Bill, and now here we were. She continued to plead, asking me to treat her differently, expressing her sorrow. I finally agreed to talk, asking where she wanted to go. She requested to go home, wanting to avoid being seen in such a state. I suggested going to my place instead, expressing my discomfort about going back to hers, uncertain of who else might be there. She let out a small whimper of dismay, but eventually nodded, agreeing to come to my home. "Okay, Corwin, whatever you want. But it's your home too," she said, and I chose not to argue with her. I declined her offer to ride with her and opted to call a cab instead. She followed me home, knowing the girls were safe with Kra and would be spending the night there. Once inside, I welcomed Amanda and made her a cup of coffee. We sat at the bar, and an uncomfortable silence fell between us, something that hadn't happened since our early dates. After a few moments, she broke the silence, asking what I wanted. I countered with a question of my own: have I mentioned wanting anything? She pressed further, asking what she needed to do to convince me to come home and see the girls. The tension hung thick in the air as I pondered my next words, uncertain of how to navigate this fragile moment. I made it clear that I had no control over whether she saw the girls, that was entirely up to them. Amanda, however, quickly turned the tables, accusing me of poisoning their minds against her and suggesting that Marcy might have been the source of my influence. I raised an eyebrow and asked, "Is Marcy now the oracle of all wisdom?" Amanda pressed further, inquiring about my true intentions. "The irony here," I replied, "is that I haven't said a single word to the girls about you. The only thing I told them was that I'm leaving and they need to decide who they want to live with." When she pushed me to reveal who had informed them, I responded with a sigh, "It was you, Amanda. You told them." Confusion washed over her face as she asked, "When did I say anything?" I reminded her of that fateful night in the living room when she had threatened me, her voice rising as I recounted how our daughters had been sitting on the stairs, ears perked up, absorbing every word of our argument. At the realization, her face turned pale, and she began to sob, unable to maintain her composure. I pointed out that the girls believed she had poisoned their perception of me, and frankly, I shared that belief. Her pleas were heart-wrenching, echoing my own feelings of despair. But I steeled my heart and responded coldly, showing indifference to the situation with the girls. "You messed this up, and now it's your responsibility to fix it," I told her. When she asked what could be done about us, I suggested she file for divorce. "But I don't want a divorce," she protested. "I just want you to come home." I corrected her, asserting that I already considered myself at home, just not with her. With a weary sigh, she apologized, admitting that forcing me into this situation was a mistake and expressing regret over her actions. She begged for forgiveness, proposing we see a marriage counselor or therapist together. I took a deep breath, explaining that the core issue wasn't about whether I wanted to go to therapy, it was that she did. "You need to file for divorce," I insisted, my voice firm. "If you don't do it within the next few months, I will take the initiative myself." I emphasized that I wanted nothing to do with her anymore, feeling certain our relationship was beyond repair. Anger flared in her eyes as she called me a fool, accusing me of taking all our money by selling the business and draining our bank accounts. I defended my actions, clarifying that I had sold the business at a significant loss and only taken what I had rightfully earned. "I don't have a dime left from that sale," I stated, which was true, at least on the surface. In reality, I had securely stashed the money away in an offshore account, realizing that it was critical to do so before the divorce proceedings began. The records would show that I sold the business to a Danish company for far less than what I owed in taxes. In fact, I had intentionally overpaid the IRS, setting aside surplus funds to offset any future tax liabilities. Our brokerage accounts remained untouched, providing a cushion that I could rely on as the storm of our divorce loomed ahead. The complexities of our situation weighed heavily on me, but I was resolute in my course of action. There was no turning back now. In the complex landscape of family dynamics, I found myself faced with a harsh reality. In order to secure a stable financial future for my daughters, I would have to relinquish a part of my assets. To ensure their well-being, I had initiated a trust, guaranteeing that they would be financially comfortable for at least the next 3 months. This was just one component of a broader strategy I had been crafting in the shadows. To maintain our household finances while ensuring the girls' security, I frequently visited a variety of grocery stores, Walmarts, and local convenience shops. With each visit, I made it a point to withdraw cash from my debit card, a calculated move to gradually accumulate a significant sum. The amounts ranged from $160 upwards, and with each transaction involving 3 people, I knew I was building a reserve that could serve us well once the situation settled. I had neatly stored this cash in an old chest tucked away in a storage building, awaiting the moment it would be needed. One afternoon, I gathered the courage to have a frank discussion with Amanda. I offered her the house, pointing out that the equity we had built could provide her with a safety net. She could sell it, clear the mortgage, and manage her finances for a while. I couldn't help but wonder about her intentions, suggesting she might consider moving in with Mr. Bill. Her shocked reaction made me question whether she truly understood the implications of her desires for an open marriage, which seemed to disregard not only our relationship but also Mr. Bill's marital status. It was time for her to face the music. I urged her to file for divorce. As I stood to leave, Amanda, visibly upset, followed me, wringing her hands and fighting back tears. She paused at the door, looked up at me, and requested that I convey her love to the girls, along with an apology. I agreed to pass on her message but reiterated that I was not giving up on our marriage. I made it clear that I wasn't filing for divorce because I wanted us to work through this, expressing my hope that she would eventually come back home. She criticized my apparent lack of open-mindedness, lamenting that she hadn't foreseen the situation spiraling out of control. Amidst this emotional turmoil, she professed her love for me and her determination to keep trying. Exhausted, I was too weary to engage further in the conversation. After she left, I took a moment to collect my thoughts before calling my friend, Pra, who kindly agreed to bring the girls home. They arrived visibly upset, even angrier with their mother than before. I knew that the message I had to deliver from Amanda would not be well received, so I decided to hold off on sharing it for a while, allowing the storm to settle. 2 days later, Amanda returned around 4:30 p.m., carrying a homemade dinner of chicken tetrazzini, French-cut green beans, and a big basket of garlic bread. When Olivia opened the door, Amanda attempted to embrace her, but Olivia stiffened, refusing her affection. Amanda addressed me warmly, calling me baby, but I could sense the tension hanging in the air. As she expressed her apologies, professed her love, and declared how much she missed me, Olivia abruptly shut her down. "Stay away," she instructed, her voice filled with anger. The sight of Amanda nearly collapsing under the weight of her emotions tugged at my heart. I instinctively rescued the basket of food from her grasp and led her to the sofa. As she sat down, burying her face in her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks, she lamented how much she felt hated. I acknowledged the hurt she had caused the girls and expressed doubt that they would trust her again. Despite feeling sympathy for her pain, I made it clear that the onus of rebuilding that relationship rested solely on her shoulders, not mine or the girls. When she mentioned the dinner she had prepared, looking at me with a pleading gaze, I felt a flicker of compassion. I realized that while she had brought this turmoil upon herself, perhaps helping her might lead us towards a path of healing, even if just a small step. This moment became a reminder of the complexities of love and commitment. As we navigated this rocky terrain together, I held on to the hope that, in time, understanding and reconciliation might emerge from the ashes of our fractured relationship. I took a deep breath and offered to talk to the girls while Amanda rummaged through the kitchen upstairs for the dishes. The moment they saw her, the girls erupted with fury, disbelief etched on their faces. How could she think that showing up and feeding us would make everything okay? Audra exclaimed, her voice tinged with anger. It was clear that Amanda's presence had only deepened their hurt. I empathized with Audra, nodding solemnly as she voiced the gravity of their situation. "Amanda has destroyed our family," she said, frustration bubbling to the surface. I understood her pain. I explained that Amanda had thrown a metaphorical hand grenade into our lives, and now she had to face the fallout from her actions. Despite Amanda's misguided belief that I was the source of our problems, I reassured the girls that my love for them remained steadfast and unchanged. "Listen," I said gently, "you have a choice. You can stay here with me, or you can go with your mother. My love for you will never waver, no matter what you decide." Olivia, the younger of the two, reacted strongly. "I'd rather hang myself than eat with her," she declared, her disgust palpable. The girls exchanged glances, and ultimately they affirmed their decision to stay with me. We shared a heartfelt hug, a silent agreement that our bond was unbreakable. After a moment of reflection, I proposed the idea of joining their mother for dinner, urging them to at least try to be civil. "What do you think?" I asked, gauging their reactions. Olivia raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Do you really want us to?" she asked. I nodded, expressing my hope that they could sit down together without resorting to mean comments. They agreed to be civil, but it was evident they intended to express their feelings regardless. Dinner turned out to be an excruciatingly awkward affair. Amanda, trying to reconnect, attempted to engage the girls in conversation, but their responses were curt and unenthusiastic. The tension in the air was palpable as we picked at our food, each bite heavy with unsaid words and unresolved emotions. After the meal, we busied ourselves cleaning up, packing Amanda's dishes as she prepared to leave. When Amanda asked Audra for a hug, Audra flatly declined, stating with resolute clarity, "You're no longer my mother." Both girls retreated to their rooms, leaving Amanda standing there, visibly distraught. I watched her, feeling a pang of pity, but I refused to take responsibility for the situation. After all, Amanda had orchestrated this chaos. It took her about 30 minutes to compose herself enough to leave, and I couldn't help but find a sense of satisfaction in the turn of events. I relished every moment of it. In the following months, Amanda continued to come over about once a week, each time hoping to rekindle some semblance of connection with the girls. Yet, each visit only served to crush her hopes further, as the girls consistently held their ground. After 6 long months, I finally filed for divorce. By the time the divorce was finalized, I sensed that Amanda had come to terms with the fact that we were truly over. The court granted her visitation rights, but ironically, every time she attempted to visit, something would inevitably come up to prevent it. I couldn't help but hope she would find someone who suited her open lifestyle, someone who could embrace her as she was. As for me, I remained unmarried, my life dedicated solely to my girls. They were my priority, my reason for everything. Life went on, filled with challenges and triumphs, but I found solace in the unwavering love we shared. Together, we navigated the stormy waters of our new reality, and I knew, without a doubt, that our bond would only grow stronger with time.